Yo, what's going on, everybody? It is your boy Fitzmonk TV here, aka G33. I want to welcome you guys back here to the Legit Shoot podcast. Doing a little bit of an extra podcast for you guys today. I haven't been making much WWE content the last couple weeks just because I've been busy doing some other things. But I wanted to make this extra podcast for you guys. We're gonna be mainly discussing the women's division and Sasha Banks and Bayley. Sasha Banks and Bayley have been absolutely carrying not only the women's division, but WWE through this, pandemic performance center era, right? And definitely with what they're doing right now, it's the best thing on WWE TV outside of Randy Orton. And it's undisputed. Anybody that says otherwise is just a fucking clown. And they don't know what the hell they're saying. They don't. All right? But we're going to be discussing Sasha Banks and Bayley, discussing the Raw Women's Championship, discussing the women's division on tonight's podcast. Depending on when you guys are listening to this, I am making this video right after the Monday Night Raw review for July 27, 2020. If you guys haven't checked that out yet, that video is live on the channel. We discussed Randy Orton challenging Drew McIntyre for the WWE Championship and Sasha Banks and Asuka, which resulted in a new Raw Women's Champion. Sasha Banks is officially two Beltz Banks. She is the new Raw Women's Champion. She is the first ever five-time, as freaking Road Dogg or Brooker T would say. She is the only five-time Raw Women's Champion in WWE history. We're going to be discussing that. Please forgive me, guys. I'm sweating a lot. Because my AC is off right now, because if I turn it on, it'll make a lot of noise, and I want to give you guys the best quality, so please forgive me, guys, if, I'm sweating a little bit, but doing what I can to give you guys the best quality content right here on the podcast. It's like 90 degrees here in the Boston area. We're in the middle of a major heat wave, so definitely do what you guys can to stay hydrated and stay safe through these crazy times, but yeah, that's going to be the loadout. We're going to be discussing what happened. What was the original plans for Sasha Banks and Asuka? We're going to be talking about where they should go from here, with SummerSlam on the horizon. Where do they go with Sasha Banks, Bayley, Asuka, and the rest of the women's division? We're going to be discussing, the women's division in general and why Sasha Banks, being the Raw Women's Champion, is the best thing for the women's division right now. And finally, we're also going to be discussing why what's going on with Sasha Banks and Bayley being this new, two-women power duo. How this is all going to eventually lead to Sasha Banks and Bayley at WrestleMania next year. Everything we're seeing right now is all going to result in something incredible with Sasha Banks and Bayley. Plus, it's going to elevate the women's division and both the Raw and SmackDown Women's Championships at the end of the day. So I want to start off with discussing the original plans for Sasha Banks and Asuka. You guys know Extreme Rules, the horror show. It really was a horror show. Sasha Banks and Asuka, they were having, one of the best matches we've seen all year. Right? They had an incredible match at Extreme Rules out until the last 2 to 3 minutes, where they, WWE just tried way too hard, trying to stir up controversy with that finish. And it was revealed that it was Vince McMahon who changed the plans a couple hours before the show went live. And you can tell with everything we've seen on Raw lately, Vince McMahon, he just can't make a decision on what he wants to do. And it's not good for the division. It's not good for the company in general. Because we are just a couple weeks away from SummerSlam. You should already have your card made up, all the storylines. I say this all the time when it comes to these big pay-per-views. WrestleMania ended in April. WWE, at least on paper, should have already had a plan for where they wanted to go. One of the problems with WWE is they book week to week to week. Instead of writing their storylines and their shows from the ending backwards to make things easier, they decide to go week by week by week, and that's not smart because you get illogical decisions made by those in upper management, and then we see those on TV, and then I have to come on here like many other podcasters and bitch and moan. And then I have to actually educate everybody who watches and listens to my podcast right? I have to come on and educate them instead of actually discussing, the positives and discussing where this can all lead up. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to bitch and moan, but this is the way WWE does things. And we saw that at Extreme Rules with Sasha Banks and Asuka. WWE wanted to stir up controversy so you would watch Monday Night Raw so they could get an increase in viewership because the ratings are so bad right now. But WWE wants to, cause all this controversy to give you a reason to tune in every single week. And instead of actually tuning in, you're just making people unhappy and not want to watch because the illogical decision making. It makes no sense. You had Sasha Banks and Asuka having one of the best matches of the year. And then you fuck that all up. You take that all away with what you did with Bayley, putting on the referee shirt and having all this controversy play out. And now here we are on the road to SummerSlam. Sasha Banks is now the new Raw Women's Champion, but now we don't even know where to go from here. You should have already had this plan. You should have had this plan since WrestleMania. If you wanted, Sasha Banks and Asuka to be the match at SummerSlam, or Sasha Banks and Bayley, or whatever, something else. If you wanted that, yes, and I understand injuries happened. Things happen. Nobody expected us to be in a pandemic era, right? Things happen. But still, that gives no excuse for WWE to make illogical decisions. No, there's no excuse for it. I don't care what anybody else says. I really don't. WWE should have had the card for SummerSlam already planned out. And if they had to make changes to it, so be it. But the fact is, you can tell WWE does not have their SummerSlam card all planned out. And that's why it seems like every single week we're seeing more and more and hearing more stories about how, Vince doesn't know what he wants to do. And we're seeing all these changes being made last minute. I absolutely hate it. So the original plans, and I'm looking at them right here. All right, I got this from Wrestling News. You can, probably find this article from other wrestling sites like PWI and Wrestling Inc. and Ringside. The original plans for the Raw Women's Championship, this goes all the way back to Extreme Rules. They've been changing this. Basically, the report says Sasha Banks was not originally booked to win the Raw Women's Championship. So WWE made a ton of changes last week as they taped last week and this week's episode of Monday Night Raw. Last Monday it was reported that they ripped up the script. They had a script all set and ready to go. But just hours before the tapings, they ripped up the entire script, and the tapings got delayed because they had to rewrite both shows. All right, because remember, WWE, the way they do it, they film two episodes of Raw in one day. Last night's Raw, depending on when you guys are watching this, was not live. All right, they pre-taped all those episodes. So basically, they ripped up the script and they rewrote Monday Night Raw. So basically, the original plan, it says here, the original plan at Extreme Rules was for Asuka to retain the Raw Women's Championship. But earlier in the day before the pay-per-view, made by Vince, the decision was made to stretch out the match so they could do it a week later on Raw. The match that was taped last week, the booking was changed to have Banks win the title this week, but the original plan was to have Asuka go to SummerSlam as the champion so she could defend against Shayna Baszler. We all knew that. We all knew that. And I posed the question last week, what were you going to do with Sasha Banks if you had her lose to Asuka? Because it would have squashed away a lot of the momentum that Sasha Banks had built up during this pandemic era, because she's been on a major role along with Bayley. And where was Sasha going to go? Right? You had given us no hints of dysfunction between Sasha Banks and Bayley. And, trying to book Sasha Banks and Bayley for the SmackDown Women's Championship with only 3 weeks of build would not be doing them justice. Like I said, Sasha and Bayley, they have a say in how their story is told. I believe that wholeheartedly. That's why we didn't see the match at WrestleMania. If you had given us Sasha Banks and Bayley at SummerSlam, right, with only 3 weeks to build, even though we would all want to see the match, it wouldn't feel as special. Because WWE would have to rush the breakup. They would have to rush, the story. And nobody wants that. We want Sasha Banks and Bayley, yes, but we want it with the best build and the best story, possible. We wanted to be told correctly. And we all knew Shayna Baszler was going to be the one to face Asuka. You brought Shayna Baszler and Bianca Belair back, which was a great decision a couple of weeks ago. And if you looked at it, nobody wanted to see Nia Jax versus Asuka. Nobody wants to see Charlotte versus Asuka. We've already seen those matches. They did tease Kairi Sane versus Asuka, which I would have had no problem with. But as we saw, Kairi Sane has been written off TV because she is leaving WWE. She's leaving WWE on good terms, and she could come back down the line, but she's leaving. So if you looked at it, who else was left for Asuka? Bianca Belair, she hasn't been built up yet. To down the line, and we're gonna discuss this a little bit later today. Down the line, yes, I believe Bianca Belair should be the one to become the Raw Women's Champion, but right now, no, it's way too early. She hasn't been built up correctly. It would have made sense. The only person that really would make sense, outside of Sasha or Kyrie, is Shayna Baszler, and it looked like that was where they were going, but they changed the plans. Asuka was supposed to defeat Sasha Banks at Extreme Rules. Vince made the decision to delay that because he wanted to create controversy. And then it also says in this that Asuka was supposed to defeat Sasha Banks originally on Raw, the Raw that was taped last week, but it aired on Monday this week. Asuka was originally booked to defeat Sasha Banks in the rematch. But, like I said, WWE tore up the script a couple hours before, and they changed it. We don't really know why. Hopefully, we'll get that information in the next couple days. I'm not going to complain because Sasha Banks is the champion. But, at the end of the day, Asuka was originally supposed to go up against Shayna Baszler. But thing is, now you have Shayna Baszler feuding with Nia Jax. We talked about that on the Monday Night Raw review this week. So clearly, I'm guessing whoever comes out the victor of that feud between Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax will be the next, number one contender for the Raw Women's Championship, no matter if it's Sasha Banks or Asuka. All right. So basically, the original plans were for Asuka to retain against Sasha, first at Extreme Rules, but that was changed. And then it was supposed to be in the rematch for Monday Night Raw, but that was changed. So now we have Sasha Banks officially as the new Raw Women's Champion. So now we have about 3 weeks left for SummerSlam. Where do we go from here? Kairi Sane was taken off per storyline, right? She was taken off of WWE TV by Bayley backstage. After the match, we saw Sasha and Bayley. They were celebrating backstage. We saw Asuka come out of the trainer's room, and she was pissed. She was emotional. Like, I don't think we've ever seen Asuka this emotional on WWE TV. She was speaking in Japanese, but we couldn't really, understand. But you could tell, you could see the emotions. She was she was teary-eyed, and she was angry, sad. A lot of emotions were going through her head. And it was reported that WWE was planning on writing off Kairi Sane. Originally it was going to be Shayna Baszler. There was reports that they were considering Nia Jax. But they said whoever was going to be the one to take out Kairi Sane was going to be Asuka's next feud. And we all thought that was going to be Shayna Baszler, but it was Bayley. So now, we got to think, where do they go? Are we going to be getting Bayley versus Asuka at SummerSlam? Because we have Nikki Cross set to face Bayley for the SmackDown Women's Championship this Friday on SmackDown, but no one believes that Nikki Cross is going to win. We're seeing this match for like the 500th time, but I don't see, Bayley losing, especially when Sasha just won the title. And now Sasha and Bayley hold all the titles. They're like Triple H and Stone Cold Steve Austin back in the Attitude Era, the two-woman power duo, right? You just had Sasha become a double champion officially, and what, you're just gonna end Bayley's almost 1 year title reign randomly just to give Nikki Cross a victory? It doesn't make any sense. So is Asuka gonna go after Bayley, or is she gonna go back after Sasha? There's options here. And now we only have 3 weeks to SummerSlam, and with WWE constantly changing their minds, we have no idea what to expect. And I'm going to tell you guys, what I would do for SummerSlam. We're going to discuss everything beyond SummerSlam in just a second, but I'm going to tell you guys what they should do for SummerSlam. All right? What I would do right now, I would do Sasha Banks versus Asuka one more time. Because clearly, you have Shayna Baszler, she's feuding with Nia Jax. Bianca Belair, she's not ready yet. Right? Ruby Riott or Liv Morgan, no, they're not ready. The only logical choice would be to do one more Sasha Banks and Asuka match and end this feud. And the right way would have Sasha Banks go over. Because why the hell would you give Sasha Banks the Raw Women's Championship if you didn't want her to be the champion going forward? We're not doing this nonsense where Sasha Banks loses the title in her first defense. If you do that, I will shit all over this company. I don't want to see that. You guys don't want to see that. All right? She is too good. She is the best female wrestler in the world, and her and Bayley have carried this company through this performance center era. That it would be disrespectful and a disservice to Sasha Banks to do that to her. What I would do at SummerSlam, and we've heard all these reports that WWE could be doing SummerSlam on a boat. They could be doing SummerSlam on a beach. They want to do something wacky. Nothing's been, announced as of yet, but we're expecting something wacky to be done for SummerSlam this year. If I'm WWE, what I would do is I would do a last woman standing match between Sasha Banks and Asuka. The chemistry between these two is so good. It's better than Asuka and Charlotte's chemistry. They have such fantastic chemistry. What I would do is we need a definite winner. No more of these controversial finishes, right? We need Sasha Banks to move on from Asuka. And Sasha Banks needs to be the Raw Women's Champion going forward. I love Asuka, and I hate the way she lost the title. But at the end of the day, Sasha needs to be the champion. She needs to be the champion. It's the best thing for her and Bayley. It's the best thing for the women's division. It's the best thing for the Raw Women's Championship. And having that title on Sasha Banks is going to elevate everybody that I just said. It's going to elevate Ruby Riott. It's going to elevate Liv Morgan. It's going to elevate Shayna Baszler. It's going to elevate, Nia Jax and whoever else you want to bring. Sasha being the champion is the best thing for everybody going forward. If Sasha loses that title in her first defense, it's going to make me think, what the fuck was the point of putting the title on her in the first place? What, why? Why? Why would you put Sasha is carrying this company. Why are you, so you're going to reward her with a 3-week title reign? Come on, I think WWE, I want to believe that WWE's not that stupid to make the same mistake that they've been doing for years. Right? You had Sasha become a 3-time Raw Women's Champion against Charlotte back in 2016, and she lost the title in all those defenses. Right? Then you had Sasha Banks win the Raw Women's Championship again a year later against Alexa Bliss, and she lost that title 8 days later in her first defense. Are you really going to do that again and piss off the rest of the community? Not only would it be a disservice to Sasha Banks, but it would be a disservice to Asuka. Right? You had Becky Lynch pass the Raw Women's Championship to Asuka after Money in the Bank when Becky announced her pregnancy. And Asuka has been a really good Raw Women's Champion these last couple months. No one should be complaining about Sasha Banks becoming the Raw Women's Champion because everyone knows that Sasha Banks is just as good, if not better, than Asuka. So no one's going to complain with Sasha Banks as Raw Women's Champion. But what's the point of taking the title off of Asuka if you're only going to have Sasha hold the championship for 3 weeks just to give the belt back to Asuka at SummerSlam? It wouldn't be good for Asuka. It wouldn't be good for Sasha Banks. It would be retarded. The best way to go going forward is to have Sasha Banks defeat Asuka at SummerSlam and move forward as Raw Women's Champion. It's best for everybody. If you're hot potatoing the championship between Sasha Banks and Asuka, how does that help the division? It doesn't. It doesn't. Sasha Banks needs to beat Asuka if they decide to do the rematch, which they probably will do at SummerSlam. You have Asuka now furious that Bayley took out Kairi Sane, so Asuka's going to be out for vengeance. She's going to be going after Sasha. She's going to be going after Bayley. She's enraged, and I can't wait to see how this all plays out. The way I would do it, with the intensity that Sasha Banks and Asuka bring, right? You can't just do a normal match at SummerSlam. There has to be some kind of stipulation. You could do maybe a street fight or no holds barred. The way I would do it personally, I would do last woman standing. I would do something like that. How great would it be to see Sasha Banks and, Asuka fighting all over the boat or all over the beach if they decide to go down that direction? That would be incredible. And then at the end, you have Sasha Banks be the last woman standing. We have a definite winner of this feud, and then we can move Sasha Banks and Asuka on to new things. Because, like I said, nobody's going to complain with Sasha Banks as the Raw Women's Champion. And I saw some people on social media complaining about this, and I was like, why? Why? Sasha Banks deserves this more than anybody. During the last 3 years, who has been putting people over? How many people has Sasha Banks put over the last 3 years? She put over freaking Lacey Evans, who is nowhere near the level of a Sasha Banks. But yet, you don't see Sasha complaining. You don't see Sasha going on social media, going on interviews, talking about how she's not given opportunities. Out of all the four horsewomen, Sasha Banks is clearly the best, but she has not been used correctly. Hell, a couple weeks ago, I played a clip when we were doing the Extreme Rules prediction show. Nikki Bella, the longest reigning Divas champion of all time, she was on the bump. And she talked about how Sasha Banks, how good she is, and how still she's been misutilized. Because we've seen Becky Lynch. She was on top of the women's division for a year and a half. We see Bayley right now. Bayley's been champion for the last year. Charlotte has been pushed down our throats. 12-time women's champion in 5 years, and she hasn't elevated anybody but herself. I saw people on social media complaining, if Charlotte and Becky, held all the championships, if Becky was Raw Women's Champion and Charlotte was SmackDown Women's Champion, and they were also the Tag Team Champions at the same time, people would be complaining. Yes, we would be complaining. Because Charlotte doesn't elevate anybody. We just saw this. You had Charlotte win the Women's Royal Rumble when she should have never won it, right? She should have never won the Women's Royal Rumble. Shayna Baszler should have. Charlotte should have never defeated Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania. But she did. And why? Because you guys said, she's going to elevate the NXT Women's Division. She's going to elevate the NXT title. She didn't elevate nobody. She didn't elevate a Chelsea Green. She didn't elevate a Mia Yim or a Candice LeRae or a Io Shirai or a Rhea Ripley. She buried that division. Rhea Ripley should still be NXT Women's Champion right now. Rhea Ripley has not recovered from losing at WrestleMania. She might never recover at this point. Rhea Ripley should have never lost that title to Charlotte. And at the end of the day, who did Charlotte elevate? How? When Charlotte lost the NXT Women's Championship at TakeOver in Your House a couple months back, she didn't even take the pin. She didn't take the pin. You had Charlotte be protected. Why? And you dare say, Charlotte was elevating the NXT Women's Division. Get the hell out of here with that nonsense. The only person that Charlotte was elevating was herself. If Charlotte and Becky held all the titles right now in WWE, we would be complaining because at the end of the day, Charlotte doesn't elevate anybody. Becky Lynch, and I like Becky Lynch. I kind of miss her. Becky Lynch going on, maternity leave was one of the best things because Becky Lynch as Raw Women's Champion was so stagnant. She wasn't elevating anybody. Outside of the matches that she had with Sasha Banks and Asuka, she wasn't elevating anybody during the 1 year she was as champion. She did nothing with that title, to be honest, outside of those 2 feuds she had with Sasha and Asuka. But I was complaining every single week because Becky Lynch would barely be on WWE TV. We wouldn't see her for 2-3 weeks, and then she would come back and then just beat somebody for, defend her title, but it wouldn't mean anything. It wouldn't be special. She didn't elevate anybody during her 1 year as champion. Now, with Becky's been gone now, she's been gone about 2-3 months at this point. I'm starting to actually miss Becky Lynch a little bit. I'm missing her intensity. I'm missing what she brought to the women's division. And when Becky comes back, hopefully next year, it's all going to depend on what happens with her pregnancy, right? When Becky Lynch eventually comes back, no matter if that's next year or the year after that, we're going to miss Becky Lynch. And it's going to make us want to see Becky Lynch succeed and actually, thrive inside the women's division again. If Becky Lynch and Charlotte held all the titles, they weren't, we would be bitching and complaining that they're not elevating anybody. Sasha Banks and Bayley, as the women's tag team champions, have elevated Tegan Nox, Shotzi Blackheart, They freaking elevated Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss. They elevated Kairi Sane and Asuka. They've elevated those tag team titles to be the best tag team titles in all of WWE. And I'm talking about NXT and Raw and SmackDown. The women's tag team championships, were props when those titles were on the Iconics, and Asuka and Kairi Sane and Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. On Sasha and Bayley, those actually feel like legit championships. Like, huh? And you're complaining that Sasha is Raw Women's Champion when she's the best female wrestler in the world? When her and Bayley have been carrying WWE throughout this Performance Center era? You're actually complaining about that. Why? Sasha Banks is going to elevate the entire Raw Women's division as long as she holds that title. And when Sasha Banks loses that title, when it's finally time for them to pull the trigger on the Sasha Banks and Bayley feud, right? We're going to look back and we're going to look at Sasha's title reign if they book her correctly, and you're going to be like, huh, she actually elevated that title. She left the Raw Women's division in a better state. And that's all that matters at the end of the day. So stop with that nonsense. If you believe Sasha Banks being champion is a problem, you are the problem with this product. You cheer when Alexa Bliss is champion. You cheer when Nia Jax is champion. But they don't do anything. They don't elevate the division. Alexa Bliss was a 5-time women's champion, right? She won, 3 Raw Women's Championships and 2 SmackDown Women's Championships. You look back, how many good matches did she actually have all those times she was champion? I can't think of any. Outside of the matches she had with Sasha Banks, and I think one match with Charlotte. All of Alexa Bliss's matches as champion were garbage. She didn't elevate that title at all. Nia Jax probably had the worst Raw Women's Championship reign of all time. And yet, you rather see them as champion than Sasha Banks? For what? For what? If you are in that boat, then you should not be watching the product. You are the reason why the WWE product in 2020 is not doing well. I don't care what anybody says. Sasha Banks being Raw Women's Champion is the right decision. And she needs to defeat Asuka or whoever they have planned for her at SummerSlam. She needs to hold that Raw Women's Championship for most of the rest of the year. I'm not asking, even though she deserves to be champion for a year, I'm not asking for Sasha Banks to be Raw Women's Champion for a year. She should hold that title till around November or December. Because if you do it correctly, it's going to make Sasha Banks and Bayley that much better, which we're going to get into in just a sec. But it's going to make the rest of the division better. Like, come on, let's use some logical sense here. I see other people complaining about, WWE never gives chances to Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville and some of these other names. You know why? Because they don't deserve it. During this Performance Center, this Performance Center era, right? We've seen all these names, are forced to stay home because of COVID, right? And we haven't seen Mandy Rose or Sonya Deville or, like Lana and Natalya and some of these other names for the last couple weeks because WWE had to put them all in quarantine because they were stupid and they decided to go to the beach and to the lakes. And, I know you guys heard the story about Lana's parents getting COVID and how Lana's parents were on the same boat as Lana's and all these other superstars, right? They all wanted to, go have fun and take risks, not only endangering themselves, but the rest of their peers. Sasha Banks and Bayley, do you see them posting pictures of them at the beach? No, I see Sasha Banks doing interviews, virtual interviews with many different companies, many different organizations, elevating the women's division at her house, behind her desk, at her laptop. I see Sasha Banks and Bayley posting workout videos every single day on their social media pages. While these female superstars want to go get sick, put themselves and the rest of their peers and their co-workers at risk of getting COVID, I see Sasha Banks and Bayley taking every single precaution to stay safe and healthy and get better. That's why Sasha Banks and Bayley are carrying the women's division, because they are focusing on their craft instead of taking risks that are going to endanger the people around them. Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose and some of these other names, yes, I want to see them succeed. Yes, I want to see new stars built up in the women's division. Because then when Charlotte and Ronda Rousey and Becky Lynch and all these other names come back, whenever that is, it's going to make the women's division better. It's going to give us more stuff to look forward to. But when these names are out, at the beaches, putting themselves at risk, I'm going to sit here and say they don't deserve to be in the title picture. Why should they be giving, title opportunities when they want to be stupid? Sasha Banks and Bayley, they continue the grind. They continue to get better each and every single week, month after month, pay-per-view after pay-per-view. They get better and better and better. While these other names, instead of focusing on their craft, they want to go wear their bikinis and go skinny dipping. When those superstars learn and they actually look at what Sasha Banks and Bayley have set as an example, when they learn not to be stupid and actually care about themselves and others around them, then I would say Sonya Deville should be built up to become SmackDown Women's Champion. Mandy Rose should get more title opportunities. Until then, I'm gonna continue to sit here and freaking, what's the word I'm looking for? Talk positive and keep talking about Sasha Banks and Bayley. Because I don't care. They are setting the right example for everybody else. And Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose and all these other names, Carmella, etc., they need to follow what they are doing. It'll be better for the women's division in the long run. So I don't want to hear that nonsense. Oh, all these other names not getting opportunities. If you want opportunities, prove it. Put in the work like Sasha Banks and Bayley do every single week, and then you will get the opportunities you deserve. I'm tired of hearing that nonsense. I'm tired of hearing that crap. The reason why Sasha Banks and Bayley are on top is because they put in the work every single day of the year. Period. With that being said, now I'm going to transition into the big thing I wanted to talk about in this video. Like I said, when it comes to Sasha Banks and Bayley in the women's division, I can go 2 hours on this. I just spent close to 40 minutes talking about this. But now I want to go into some fantasy booking. You guys know how much I love the fantasy book here on the podcast, man. I am the king of fantasy booking. If WWE would listen to half the stuff I said, freaking the ratings would not be doing a 1.5. They would be at least over a 2 and probably going up. But now I'm going to tell you guys how all this leads to Sasha Banks and Bayley. All right? I'm going to tell you how I would book the Raw Women's Championship going forward. And man, I am sweating. Holy crap. Anyway, so I already talked about how Sasha Banks and Asuka, that's most likely going to be the match going forward in the SummerSlam. And how it makes no sense for you to take the title off of Sasha Banks at SummerSlam and give it back to Asuka. It's a disservice to Asuka. It's a disservice to Sasha Banks. I'm going to tell you guys how to book the Raw Women's Championship going forward from now all the way up till WrestleMania, and how this all leads to Sasha Banks and Bayley. I know there were some people saying they should do title versus title, and how they should do, Sasha Banks and Bayley for, winner take all. We're not getting that, and we shouldn't get that. I'm going to tell you guys what to do. So Sasha Banks should defeat Asuka at SummerSlam. I would do a stipulation, I think they should do something like a last woman standing match, but, we'll just have to wait and see. Sasha Banks should win that. Honestly, I don't really know who you have Bayley go up against, because Bayley's defeated most of the SmackDown Women's roster. Yes, you could do, maybe Bayley versus Mandy Rose or Bayley versus Sonya Deville. I know there's rumors of them maybe doing Bayley versus Stephanie McMahon. Even though I don't know if I want to see that. I don't know if I want to see Stephanie McMahon in a ring in 2020, but if they want, they definitely have that option on the table. What I would do is, all right, now you have both Sasha Banks and Bayley as double champions. After SummerSlam, Sasha and Bayley are still double champions. I would build up Liv Morgan and Ruby Riott. We haven't seen Liv Morgan because I believe she's still in quarantine because she was one of those, dumb female superstars that decided to go on the boat and put themselves at risk of getting COVID. But I would build up Liv Morgan and Ruby Riott because right now we're seeing Bianca Belair and Ruby Riott together. But at the end of the day, Bianca Belair needs to be a single star. And plus, Bianca Belair is going to factor into what I would do with the Raw Women's Championship. What I would do is I would do Sasha Banks and Bayley against Liv Morgan and Ruby Riott for the women's tag team titles. We don't need to see Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. We don't need to see the Iconics. We're not going to see the Kubaki Warriors since Kairi Sane is no longer on WWE TV. I would build somebody else, somebody new. Liv Morgan and Ruby Riott. Plus, you can do the story. Sasha Banks and Bayley have history. They have history with Liv Morgan and Ruby Riott. Remember back in, I think it was 2018? Remember we were seeing the Riott Squad versus Sasha Banks and Bayley, and sometimes it would be Natalia or Ember Moon or somebody like that every single week, and it was pure torture. So these two teams do have history. What I would do, I would build up Liv Morgan and Ruby Riott to take Sasha Banks and Bayley to the limit and become the new women's tag team champions. I would do that. Because now that Sasha Banks and Bayley hold singles gold, they don't need the women's tag team titles. You don't need. I thought they were going to use those tag team titles to, start building tension. But now that you have Sasha Banks as Raw Women's Champion, you can actually use that singles championship to build tension between Sasha Banks and Bayley. So what I would do, I would have Liv Morgan and Ruby Riott take the women's tag team titles off Sasha Banks and Bayley after SummerSlam. Maybe you could do that the night after SummerSlam. Maybe you could do it at Clash of Champions because, Clash of Champions, every single title is defended. So if Sasha Banks and Bayley are both double champions at that time, right? They're both gonna have to defend both of their titles. So I would have Sasha Banks and Bayley lose the women's tag team titles to Liv Morgan and Ruby Riott, probably at Clash of Champions, right? So now Sasha Banks and Bayley, they lose one of their titles. So they're no longer both double champions, but still at the end of the day, Sasha would be Raw Women's Champion, Bayley would be SmackDown Women's Champion. Then there's different directions you can go. Maybe you can have Sasha Banks feud with Shayna Baszler. I know that's a feud everybody would love to see. And you could have Sasha Banks and Shayna Baszler feud into the early fall months, right? Shayna Baszler could be like the anti-hero in a way because Sasha Banks is not turning babyface, at least not yet. But you can do something like that. Maybe you can do Sasha Banks and Natalia, right? You could do Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair, but I would hold off on that until near the end of the year. I would hold off on that for at least 1 or 2 more months. But I would most likely probably do Sasha Banks and Shayna Baszler feuding into the fall for the Raw Women's Championship. I would have Sasha, stay Raw Women's Champion through Clash of Champions, through Hell in a Cell, since those are going to be the two pay-per-views we have in September and October. I don't know if they're going to do a Hell in a Cell match inside the Performance Center, because I believe we'll still be doing shows in the Performance Center by this time in October, even though that's 3 months, from now. But like I said earlier, I don't see WWE getting back to live crowds until 2021. That's just the way I see it. Things could change, but that's the way I see it right now. But that's what I would do. I would have Sasha Banks and Shayna Baszler feuding into the October months. And then on SmackDown, you can maybe have Bayley feud with Sonya Deville, or have Bayley feud with Mandy Rose. Because I don't want to see Bayley feuding with Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. I'm done with that. We've seen that over and over and over again. Like, no. This Friday on SmackDown, Bayley needs to defeat Nikki Cross, and we need to end that. We need to end that for real. All right? So what I would do, I would have Sasha Banks feuding with Shayna Baszler or Natalia or somebody like that. And on SmackDown, Bayley is feuding with Mandy Rose, Sonya Deville, things like that. Right? And you have this whole two-woman power duo, similar to Stone Cold Steve Austin and Triple H back in the Attitude Era. I think that was 2001 when Stone Cold was a heel for that short time. That's what I would do. So then we get past Clash of Champions. We get past Hell in a Cell. Sasha and Bayley are still, Raw Women's and SmackDown Women's Championship. Right? They still hold those titles. They may not be the women's tag team titles because I would have them drop them to Liv Morgan and Ruby Riott. So now we're entering into Survivor Series. And we know Survivor Series is brand versus brand versus brand, right? So basically, Sasha's Raw Women's Champion, Bayley's the SmackDown Women's Champion, all right? And most likely, I guess, if Io Shirai or whoever's the NXT Women's Champion at that time, they would most likely do a triple threat, but I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. You can do your whole brand versus brand, thing for other things like, the men's Survivor Series match or and things like that. But in terms of the women's titles, I wouldn't do that because that would force Sasha Banks and Bayley to have to go up against one another, and we don't want to see that. You need to save that. Sasha and Bayley cannot have any in-ring encounters against one another until WrestleMania next year, because that's what this is all building up towards. So at Survivor Series, what I would do something unique. It's called the Survivor Series. So let's see if Sasha Banks and Bayley can survive the Survivor Series. What do I mean by that? I would have something like Sasha Banks and Bayley separately have to defend their titles against all members of their individual locker rooms. So you could do something like a gauntlet match. You can do something like, an elimination match, kind of similar to the Elimination Chamber, you know. But I would have Sasha Banks be forced to defend her Raw Women's Championship against, let's say, 4 or 5 other women. And Bayley has to do the same thing. On SmackDown, you can have Bayley go up against Naomi, Sonya Deville, Mandy Rose. Uh, who else is on that division? I guess a Lacey Evans, right? Maybe a Carmella or a Nikki Cross, something like that. So Bayley has to defend her title against 5 other women. And on Raw, I would have Sasha do the same thing. Sasha has to defend against an Asuka, Shayna Baszler. You have Bianca Belair in there. You could have Natalia. Maybe even have Charlotte. And then I would have Sasha Banks and Bayley both come out of the Survivor Series as champions. Since they are the heels, they have the deck stick against them. And then they come out as powerful as ever. And then that's when I would start teasing the breakup between Sasha Banks and Bayley, right? They've been on top of the women's division most of the year, and now as they exit Survivor Series, everything looks great. They're not going to be stopped at all. But that's when I would finally start building the tension between Sasha Banks and Bayley. What I would do coming out of the Survivor Series, I would start planting seeds of dysfunction. And then let's say TLC, right? I believe TLC would be the next pay-per-view after that. I would have Sasha Banks lose the Raw Women's Championship to Bianca Belair. I think you should spend most of the rest of the summer and the fall building up Bianca Belair to become the new top babyface of the Raw Women's division. And then I would have Bianca Belair take the Raw Women's title from Sasha Banks around, November, December, right? And if you want, you don't have to do this, but if you want, you could have Bayley lose the SmackDown Women's Championship to Sonya Deville or somebody like that. You can make Sonya Deville a transitional champion. She doesn't have to hold the title for that long. You can have her hold the title for like a month or two. Because then what I would do, after Sasha losing the Raw Women's Championship to Bianca Belair, what I would do is I would have Sasha go on to win the Women's Royal Rumble, right? I would have Sasha go on to win the Women's Royal Rumble, and then what's the pay-per-view after the Royal Rumble? The Elimination Chamber. So no matter if Bayley's champion or not, if Bayley's the champion, fine. If Bayley's not the champion, I would have her win back the SmackDown Women's Champion. The reason why I'm saying you would have Bayley lose the SmackDown Women's Championship is because you can create dysfunction between Sasha Banks and Bayley, start planting those small seeds of dysfunction. Plus, we've seen Bayley as the champion now for, the better part of the last year and a half. So it would be a little bit of a change of pace, right? It would be something a little bit different. It would give somebody else a chance to run with the title for just a couple months. I don't think anybody would complain if Sonya Deville held the title for like 1 or 2 months, right? So then, during this time, Sasha's teasing, her going up against either the Raw Women's Championship or the SmackDown Women's Championship. Sasha's, considering all her options, right? And during this time, we're seeing Sasha slowly drift away from Bayley. She starts, slowly turning back into a babyface. And then Bayley, as a heel, wins back the SmackDown Women's Championship or defends the SmackDown Women's Championship at the Elimination Chamber, right? And then so coming outside of the Elimination Chamber, Bayley's the SmackDown Women's Champion, and then Sasha Banks challenges Bayley for the SmackDown Women's Championship going into WrestleMania, and that's your big match. So now Sasha's the babyface, and now she's going up against a heel Bayley at WrestleMania. Now you have the breakup storyline, and that's what you build us to your big match, your big women's match at WrestleMania. On Raw, you can do whatever. Bianca Belair versus Shayna Baszler, that's an option. You can do Bianca Belair versus Asuka. Bianca Belair versus Charlotte. I don't think Becky will be back by then, but if Becky's back, you could do Becky versus Bianca. But by that time, Sasha would no longer be the Raw Women's Champion. She would have left the Raw Women's Championship in a amazing state by putting over Bianca Belair, building a new star in the process, and then she finally goes on to go up against Bayley for the SmackDown Women's Championship at WrestleMania. Then Sasha could finally win the SmackDown Women's Championship at WrestleMania as the babyface. She can get her first WrestleMania victory, plus become a Grand Slam champion. Do you guys see how good I am at booking this stuff, man? I just fantasy booked the Raw and SmackDown Women's Championships in 10, 15 minutes from SummerSlam all the way to WrestleMania. What? Can somebody from WWE pay me? Come on. So then you get Sasha Banks and Bayley in their big match at WrestleMania. The breakup has happened. We're all, invested into the storyline. You have live crowds back again. And there's so much you can tell. Sasha Banks going to become a Grand Slam champion. Going for her first ever WrestleMania victory. Come on. It's brilliant storytelling. And all this is because Sasha Banks and Bayley have been the MVPs of the women's division since this Performance Center era started. See how things come full circle? So just in case, you were losing track of what I just said, let me just, break it down one more time as quickly as possible. This is what you do, right? Coming out of SummerSlam, Sasha Banks and Bayley are both Raw and SmackDown Women's Championships, plus they're still Tag Team Champions. At Clash of Champions, I would have Sasha Banks and Bayley lose the Women's Tag Team Championships to Liv Morgan and Ruby Riott, but they remain Raw and SmackDown Women's Champions. So then throughout the fall, I would have Sasha Banks and Bayley defend the Raw and SmackDown Women's Championships against, Shayna Baszler, Sonya Deville, Mandy Rose, etc., etc. Right? Then at Survivor Series, I would have Sasha Banks and Bayley, instead of going up against each other, I would have them defend their women's championships against both of their individual divisions, right? Stacking the deck against the power duo. And then Sasha Banks and Bayley come out of Survivor Series still as champions, but that's when I would have Sasha Banks lose the Raw Women's Championship to Bianca Belair at TLC or whatever. If you want, you can take the title off of Bayley, but you don't have to necessarily. Then Sasha wins the Women's Royal Rumble. Then at the Elimination Chamber, Bayley, no matter if she's the Women's Champion or not, she comes out of the Elimination Chamber as SmackDown Women's Champion. Sasha Banks revealed that she's going after Bayley, right? Because during this time, after Sasha loses the Raw Women's Championship to Bianca Belair, you tease the dysfunction between the duo. And then Sasha turns babyface, and you have Sasha go after Bayley for the SmackDown Women's Championship at WrestleMania. And at this point, you should have live crowds back in attendance. And Sasha's the babyface, going for her first WrestleMania victory, right? Going for her first Grand Slam title. Sasha beats Bayley in the main event of WrestleMania 37. No matter if it's in LA or Florida or somewhere else. That's the way I would book it. And you guys cannot tell me that is brilliant storytelling. Will WWE listen to me? They should. And if anybody, has connections to somebody at WWE Creative, I would send them this video because this is the way you should do it. I'm tired of this whole week by week booking. Vince McMahon should be thinking, how does this all lead to Sasha Banks and Bayley at WrestleMania? And just make your way backwards. Or just follow my formula, what I just gave you. That's the way I would do it. I wanted to have a little bit of fun on today's podcast and discuss how Sasha Banks, how two Beltz Banks should be booked going forward. And at the end of the day, when this all comes to a head and we look back, we can think, damn, look at what Sasha Banks and Bayley did. They left the women's division in a better state at the end of the day. And nobody's going to be complaining. No one. If you guys agree with me on that, let me know in the comment section. Leave a like on this video. If you guys have your own scenario of how they should book Sasha Banks and Bayley going forward and how this will eventually lead to Sasha Banks and Bayley, put your own theories in the comment section. I'll be replying to your comments, give you guys my thoughts on that. But that's the way I personally would do it going forward. All right. But other than that, guys, that's about all I got for you guys today. I'm gonna get out of here. I've went almost an hour. I'm not surprised because I knew I was probably gonna do that because when it comes to the women's division, I'm really passionate about that. But other than that, guys, that's all I got for you guys today. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed this extra podcast. We focused mainly on the women's division. I wanted to do that for you guys today. So hopefully, you guys enjoyed. If you guys enjoyed the podcast, no matter if you guys disagree with me or not, as long as you guys enjoyed, that's what matters. Hopefully, you guys learned a little bit of something. If you guys enjoyed the podcast, man, leave a like on the video. It really helps me out. Share it out to your friends. Educate a lot of other people. Because right here on the Legit True Podcast, we speak facts every single week. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you guys haven't checked out my Monday Night Raw review, it is live on the channel. So make sure to go check that out. Make sure to support it. If you guys are new to the channel, click the bell right next to my name, Fitzmonk TV, so you guys are notified every time I post a new video. Follow me on social media. I live tweet about WWE, anime, and all other things I'm passionate about. Go check out my other videos. I have a lot of content. I have something here for everybody here on this channel, so make sure to go check that out. Other than that, guys, that's all I got for you guys today. Stay safe and healthy. I'll see you guys later this week for the SmackDown review, depending on when you guys are watching this video. But thank you guys for the love and support. Continue to show support to the channel. It means the world to me. Thank you guys for everything. I'll see you guys later. Peace.